Hey everyone. As you may recall, we last left off doing loops, particularly while loops, which are the most basic form of loops in C#. And in this tutorial, I'm going to talk about some for loops, which are a little more difficult and a little more advanced, but they're in the same spirit. So, as you can see, I have given the Talker program we did in our last tutorial a bit of a makeover. It looks much more well formatted, I guess you could say. I basically just formatted this button to look cooler, as you can see. I just moved things around a bit, resized it. Nothing really fancy has changed. So let's go ahead and double click on this button. And as you can see, I have removed all of the code because we are going to approach the code this time in a different fashion. So the names and identifiers are all the same, though. This is still text box 1, and this is still numeric up down 1. So just a little word of caution, I suppose. A for loop is done just as any other construct we've worked with has started. You basically it's just for and then the condition. However, in this case, there are 3 separate conditions. And only one of them really is a condition. 2 of them are a statement, and 1 is a condition. So the first thing that we have to input for this for loop is a statement. And this statement is what happens whenever the for loop is first first run. So, for instance, we can create a variable. So in this case, I'm going to create a variable called int count and set it equal to 0. So that's our first statement. Our first statement basically creates a variable called count. This first statement could be anything. Usually it's for creating a variable, though, because a for loop is generally like the while loop we did before. However, instead of having to add on to count each time, it doesn't within the for loop. So instead of creating a count out here, like int count is equal to 0, and then adding on to count in here, the loop itself actually covers that. You see, so we don't actually need that. Right, so our first statement is just creating the variable count. Then we have a condition. Now this condition is basically what makes this loop keep going. As long as this condition is met each time the loop restarts, it will keep going. So for our condition, we're going to make sure that count is less than numeric up down 1 dot value. Just like our last tutorial, that's the only thing that is essentially the same with a while loop. It still has its condition. While it does have 2 statements to add on. So now we do our second statement, which is the last part of this for loop that we add on. So for our last statement, you can do anything you want, but in this case, in most cases, when it comes to loops, you're just adding on to that original variable you created over here, this count variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, for instance, count plus plus. So each time this loop runs, well, actually, the first time this loop runs, it creates the count variable. Then for every consecutive time after that, and that first time, it checks whether count is less than numeric up down 1 value. Then it also adds 1 onto count right here. So the first time it's going to be set to 0, and if numeric up down 1 is higher than 0, it's going to continue and add 1 onto count and then do this code. The next time it loops around, clearly count has been changed to 1 now, so it checks whether 1 is less than numeric up down 1 value, and if so, continues on, adds 1 to count, and then runs this. So what we want to do in here is we want to, once again, like we did in our last tutorial, create a message. So let's up here create a string message, set it equal to a blank string, and then we're going to take our message and add on, remember plus equals, it basically adds a new string onto this already existing string, and we're going to add on the text box 1 dot text. remember the text box 1 does not have a value property. It has a text property. That is its value. So, and then add on a new line, because we don't want it to be scrunched up. We want it to be, printed out in lines, basically. And we don't need our count plus plus because it does it within the loop. So that is a for loop for you. It's very, very simple. It's just a while loop without having to do those statements outside of the loop. So it's very effective. It cuts down on the amount of code you have to write, and in general it's just very helpful. Now then, let's just output our message just like before. And if we run this program, we'll find that it is very similar to the last one we created. Let's give it, I guess, we'll make it say it 5 times, and then we'll make it say Kirk. And as we can see, it says Kirk 5 times. Give it 0 times, and it won't say it at all. Give it nothing but 6 times, it'll just 6 blank lines. So that's a for loop. It's, once again, just like a while loop with a little more spice, I guess you could say. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope you learned something. And in our next video, we're going to be starting some object-oriented programming. So that'll be pretty cool. Oh wait, no. Actually, we're going to go over arrays. So get ready for that. Arrays. We're going to talk about variables that include multiple values using rows. So, see you then. Signing off.